So again, hello everybody. It's Monday, it's the deer park. It's time for some Dharma. So if you would please get into a nice meditation posture wherever you are behind your avatar. And as I ring the Ching bell, just want you to focus on the sound of the bell, really get that deep listening going, really get that concentration going today. You're probably going to get distracted. It happens to all of us. When it does, I just want you to gently remind yourself and go back to focusing on the sound of the bell. And there'll be short pause, 3 recitations, and on with the talk for today. So I'll give you a moment, get into a nice posture, and we'll begin at the sound of the bell. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the teaching. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the taught. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I have taken refuge in the Buddha. I have taken refuge in the Dharma. I have taken refuge in the Sangha. 3 pure precepts. Cease to do harm. Do only good. Do good for others. Bodhisattva vow. However innumerable all beings are, I vow to lead them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Swaha. So once again, hello everybody. Monday, Deer Park, Buddha Center. We're here. Always good. See some new faces today. Excellent. Always great to see new folks. Today we're going to talk about something that those of you that have been sitting with me for a while, you've heard me use the term rigorous self-honesty quite often, actually. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about honesty. as a state of being. As how we choose to be. In order to clearly reveal our habitual reactivities, our dispositions and our habits, whether they're wholesome or unwholesome, we've got to engage in an honest internal dialogue. For example, you got to, those angels that will show up on your shoulder, the good angel and the not so good angel, and they're always trying to tell you, ooh, do it this way, do it that way. Well, you've got to start out by just flicking both of those off of your shoulders. Thank you for letting us know, Sakura. Yeah, Yuri, we may have to ask those folks to vacate so we can have the room. So, back to it. So you got those angels that can appear on your shoulder, like I said, the ones that are saying, do good or do not so good. You've got to flick both of those off of your shoulders. Because they're they're like an internal editor, if you will. And you just don't need them right now. By flicking them both off your shoulders, you will allow yourself to attain discernment without preconceptions, without positive or negative preconceptions. This is what rigorous self-honesty is looking at yourself without those preconceptions, without that fog, without that dust on the lens, if you will. And you can start right now being rigorously self-honest. You don't have to wait. But it is a path. It's a path to uncovering the delusions that you hold on to. These are the delusions that can cloud the body-mind, right? That can hinder our practice. Rigorous self-honesty is not a term, at least up to now, that I've found in any Buddhist-themed works. The ideal does arise, though, in other self-improvement literature as a way to uncover addictive behavior. And these texts implore that self-honesty is the path to admitting there is a problem. Conversely, though, it is also the path to admitting that there are ways that you effectively engage life. So rigorous self-honesty isn't only used to uncover the negative side of ourselves, but we want to use it to uncover the positive side of ourselves too. The concept of rigorous self-honesty becomes clear in Buddhist teachings when we start to look at the importance of training the self, or impermanence, or causal conditioning, and the philosophy of the not-self. If we can't engage in rigorous self-honesty, it's be very difficult for us to engage in any of those Buddhist studies or practices. Meditation and mindfulness. These are paths to admitting delusions, to uncovering cravings and attachments of the self. So, meditation then and mindfulness are acts of self-honesty if we engage them appropriately. Like, we can remain mindful of the lies we tell ourselves and never change them. Just stay mindful of them. That's kind of not the point, right? We want to uncover them, and if they're unwholesome, well, we want to work to change them. And if they're wholesome, we want to work to strengthen them. All day long, moment to moment, you're always having conversations with yourself. In fact, right now, there's probably a little bit of conversating going on inside your head. And the conversations can be holistic experiences that improve how you are, right? You're talking nice to yourself. You're making good plans. Or they can highlight a dualism that hinders how you want to be. So maybe you come to realize what actions and efforts you need to reach your goal. Or you might be having a goal and then continually talking yourself out of reaching it because you can't be honest with yourself about it. The deciding factor here is how much value that you put on the internal practice of honesty. You may know someone that's, man, they want everybody around them to be honest, but they're not always the same. We don't want to be that way, right? A self-honest conversation can energize the body-mind. But if you lie to yourself, it just drains the energy away. It takes so much energy to lie to yourself that you lose out on energy that could be put to a lot better use. It takes energy to be an inner critic, right? To always be putting yourself down or checking everything that you do. It can be tiring. And it's energy that can be put toward accomplishing tasks. Now you might say, wait a minute, isn't that inner critic kind of mindfulness? No. Mindfulness is watching and being aware, right? An inner critic is a person that's always, you could have done it better, you could have done it this way, why didn't you try this way? So one of the first 5 precepts in Buddhism is to not lie. People new to Buddhism, and some whose practice has not fully matured, act as if the intent of this vow was to not lie to other people. That's totally logical, right? Do not lie. Do not lie to others. Makes perfect sense. But we can't ignore that there is one person that we are most likely to lie to over and over, and that's ourselves. Because we lie to ourselves, nobody else knows. But a sincere practice, a sincere Buddhist practice, thrives on honesty. Greetings, Aru. Glad you joined us. Training in any discipline begins with changing how you think and act. And practicing the way of the middle path, it's no different. We've talked about this many times. Change the way you think, changes the way you act. Change the way you act, changes the way you think. But you must develop a practice of rigorous self-honesty directed toward a realistic determination of your habitual reactivities, those habits and dispositions that currently drive your body-mind. You must learn the value of self-honesty and be ready and willing to recognize your strengths and weaknesses so you can firmly walk the path toward positive self-development. Flaws, hey, they're part of being human, and you got to acknowledge them. You can't deny they're there because they're there. So you've got to acknowledge them, especially to yourself, in order to be able to realize the paths that you're going to need to get on in order to correct them. You have strengths as a human being, great strengths. And these are strengths that you can go on and develop into dispositions that can then transform you into an agent of positive change. And I want to stress again, when you start engaging in rigorous self-honesty, you're going to find out many good things about yourself, many wholesome things, and you're going to have to realize them and accept them. That's very hard for some people to do. It's hard for some folks to accept that they have good points because they're always focusing on those negative. So rigorous self-honesty as a term, as a contemporary term, was brought into pragmatic Buddhist practice by Rugen Sensei. That's my teacher's teacher. He's a revered master in our lineage, and it's a term and action used as part of things like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narconon, and most of the 12-step programs use it. Jewish recovery organizations promote it, and there are other models directed towards self-improvement that use the term rigorous self-honesty. And while it is a contemporary application, the ideal can be clearly seen in Buddhist legacy teachings and in the sutras. And I have some examples. Hello, Koan. We'll start with Ihai Dogen, Japanese Zen master, brought some beautiful meditation practices from China into Japan. And you've probably heard this quote before, quote, "To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by the 10,000 things," unquote. Well, this quote teaches us the deep connection between studying Buddhism and studying the self. Big connection there. But it also opens up something else, that in order to effectively study the self, you've got to engage in rigorous self-honesty, or you're not truly studying the self, right? You're studying a a diluted version of the self, if you will. Throw it in right now. Is this easy? No. We don't like uncovering stuff about ourselves sometimes. It's got to be done. And from the Dhammapada, we find this, quote, your own self is your own mainstay. For who else could your mainstay be? With you yourself well trained, you obtain the mainstay hard to obtain. Seems very confusing, but it boils down to you are your best mainstay. You are the foundation. You can always go back to yourself. But you have to be honest with yourself. You know, there's the old saying that a relationship cannot be built on lies. Well, that includes your relationship with yourself. To trust yourself, you've got to be honest with yourself. You wouldn't trust a friend or a stranger who you knew was always lying to you. You wouldn't trust them. So why do you trust yourself if you do the same? There are new or even long-time Buddhist practitioners that can kind of get caught up in the Buddha. Buddhist practice, though, is not about the Buddha. It's about you. It's about your concept of self and the ways that not self can be transformed into the compassionate and generous and aware person that you imagine yourself to be. To be well trained, there must be focus on the self. It begins with recognizing how easy it has been for you to do the things that hinder you. You make an honest appraisal of your unwholesome dispositions like hate and anger and dispassion and a lot of other unwholesome things. Let's see. Greed, lying, procrastination. So many you could add to the list. You spend an equal amount of energy making an appraisal of your wholesome dispositions, like loving kindness and generosity of spirit and acceptance. So you want to kind of give equal time, right? Balance. If you're digging into yourself with rigorous self-honesty, you don't want to go all for the good or all for the bad. You come to realize that while wholesome habits might be harder to achieve and maintain, in the end, it empowers you to do more and to be more. The practice of rigorous self-honesty begins as a meditative exercise when you take stock of your habitual reactivities. Honesty must be applied to what you perceive as wholesome dispositions as well as negative dispositions. Ego has its foundation in the positive and negative aspects of your personality. And rigorous self-honesty goes off the cushion as you apply it in moment-to-moment experiences. And from that practice, you gradually develop wisdom. Rigorous self-honesty arises from wisdom, and wisdom arises from rigorous self-honesty. And we always talk about wisdom. Wisdom comes up a lot. We want to be wise about the things that we do and say with others and how we engage the world around us. But first we need to back up. We need to do the same for ourselves. Continuing to hold a dishonest evaluation of yourself is not an appropriate view. You can become attached to the dishonest notions you hold about yourself and be fearful of accepting that you may not be wrong. You may not be so bad. You can convince yourself that you are how you think you are, rather than recognizing how you really are and realizing how you could be. Let rigorous self-honesty reveal the good, the bad, and the indifferent dispositions and habits that make up your character. Then, use the empowering ideals of not-self and impermanence and causality, and then get to work on some wholesome changes. Put in the effort. Make the commitment. Take the actions. Self-honesty, though, does not automatically equate to transformation. You've got to take the interim steps between the two experiences. Like I said, you got to make the effort, you got to use some mindfulness, you got to use some focus and concentration. So between rigorous self-honesty and appropriate effort, mindfulness, and concentration, that's a path to transformation. So you can start right now being rigorously self-honest. A great way to kickstart this practice is engage in a need-want practice. What do I mean by need and want? We all have lists in our head. These are things that I want, and these are things that I need. Well, those lists, they can get kind of jumbled up, and the things that we think are a want might actually be a need, and things that we think are a need might just actually be a want. So a great way to engage your rigorous self-honesty and get a little practice with it, take a piece of paper and just without too much thought on it, 2 columns, want, need, and just start writing out things I want, things I need. Turn it over, contemplate for 2 or 3 minutes about what rigorous self-honesty is, turn that piece of paper back over and look over those lists. Chances are you're going to be switching a lot of those. Oh, I put this in the want column. This is not actually a want. This is actually something I need. But you have to be honest with yourself, because things that we might suddenly believe are a need, we might need to look a little deeper at. It's easy for us to be rigorously self-honest about what we need usually, not so much about what we want. And this is a great way to practice that with yourself. Nobody else has got to see the list. You don't have to show it to anybody. It's all your information. All right.